Okay. So what we have done in the last class is that we derived the signal equation for MR imaging, right? And from that, it is clear, or it should be clear, on how the signal is acquired in case of MR imaging in the Fourier domain. And from that, by taking the inverse Fourier transform and using concepts like Fourier slice theorem, you could get back your image in the spatial domain. So that's what we have discussed in our previous class. And in this class, what we would do is we would uh, go more in detail into how do you select a particular slice, okay, in a given entire volume. In other words, we don't want the response coming from the entire object or the body for which we are taking, which is under the scanner, but rather we want it at a given point of time, the response coming from just a particular slice, or in other words, just a particular region. Okay, that's what we would like to choose. So that's what we will do in this class. And even before that, what I would like to show you is some illustrations on how this T1 and the T1 relaxation and T2 relaxations will have an impact on the magnetic field. So this we already discussed, but there are some nice illustrations that were there in the Professor Krishna Naik's video lectures. So I would, very small video clips are there. So I'll just share with you and have a brief word about them, and then we will move on to the slice selection part. Okay. So for that purpose, let me share my screen, and then we come here. So for example, again, if you recollect from our previous classes, okay, even from the signal equation, if you look at the signal equation here and all, you could see that this is, okay, let me put it in this manner. Right. So if you look at here, this is what the signal M of R bar comma T, if you look at this magnetic field, if you look at not the signal, it's the magnetic field. Okay. There is T missing here. Okay. In this, there should be E power minus J omega naught T is there. So on one side, if you look at this, this is the transverse magnetization field. So on one side, its magnitude is coming down, right? So its magnitude is exponentially decaying because of this e power minus t by t2 term, and then there is an e power minus j omega naught t term, the t is missing there. So that is what is making that field rotate. Okay, there are actually, we will not go in very detail, but it is very easy for you to understand it. It's not at all a difficult thing to visualize that. What they would do is, instead of rotating the magnetic field, so you need to show it. So I will show you this display of how it would look like. um, so let me show you, for example, this is, yeah, let me open something and then let's see what it is giving us. You look at this. So this is, I'm playing again, this is at a very fast pace. So see, uh, you look at, this is B1 tip lab frame. Okay, and this is your applied, so look at how, right, so you are applying a B1 magnetic field in the XY plane to tip that down, right? And you are looking at its value. If you are taking, if you are looking at T2 relaxation, which is also referred to as free induction decay, in that case you would be taking the XY projection of it. So one thing is, because of the term e power minus t by t2, right, because of that its value is decreasing, right, e power minus the on the x-axis projection. So you could see, sorry, it is in e power, I'm sorry, this is a slightly different one I'm talking about. This is how it gets tipped when you are applying B1. Forget about what I mentioned earlier. You have applied a B naught magnetic field. Okay, that is something that brought some magnetization M. Now in the XY plane or in the transverse plane, you are applying B1, right, and which tips it to the XY plane. Okay, and this tipping, how it is going to happen is, that is what is shown here. So you could see here, That's and then you could also hope it is clear to you. The yellow one is the one which is giving you the projection of it on the xy plane. So you make it completely come onto the xy plane. Till then you apply it. So even from the name you could figure it out. This is B1 tip lab, and so applying B1 to tip it into the xy frame, and that is how it keeps coming down. The white, look at the white arrow. That is how your initial M0 is coming down. Is this illustration clear on how this is going to happen, or any questions here? Is it? I hope that's clear to everyone. Maybe I'll ask Sai Pavan, is that clear? What is the illustration shown here?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. So now another convention that is followed throughout your MR imaging is, which we have not discussed in depth, is that this rotation, they would add, they make this rotation. See, either you could rotate it or it is equivalent to rotating your coordinate axis itself. So that's what they will refer to as rotating frame. This where your XYZ are constant is called as lab frame, and where you consider your axis are rotating. So in that case, you could, it is not difficult then to visualize that it's just coming like this, because this rotation, see, it is rotating on one side, and then the angle of your rotation is increasing until it comes to the Z plane. So if you, this is rotating at a constant value, that rotation, with that you rotate this frame. So the rotating frame is what you take, and then you just, all that you have there is now how this projection is varying on the XY plane. So I will show you, this is the result which we have seen so far is a lab frame, okay, where there is a rotation as well as angular change. So these are the two things that are present here. If you take a rotational frame, on the other hand, would look like this. See, they made a nice illustration here where they are showing your frame also to rotate. So that's how your B1 value. So once you, when you are applying the B1, your field will be tipped to the XY plane. And if you are making this XY plane itself, axis coordinate itself to rotate around the Z axis, okay. And it is for this purpose, actually, the way we have written the dm by dt from that block equation, we have written purposefully it as rotation around Z axis with a speed of omega naught times t. Okay, hope if you're with a speed of omega naught there, okay, radians per second. So with that you would rotate the xy plane, and then all you are left with is this change in the angle. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Good.
So the angular velocity during precession remains the same.
Right, correct. That's right.
Okay.
Because angular velocity is dependent on what? That also we have derived it, right? Omega radians per second, gamma times b naught would give you, as long as
Normal
the
frequency. Yeah.
applied field is constant, b naught you are applying, gamma times b naught is the angular velocity with which, or the velocity with which it rotates. So as long as your magnetic field is constant, your velocity is constant.
Okay, sir.
This is a, yeah, they made a very nice illustration. Again, there are many tools also, but anyway, for us this is good enough to get the feel of it. Okay, I hope it is clear. Right. So one last thing now, one more nice illustration here is about the relaxation. Okay, how the, so this relaxation, if we don't say anything, this usually refers to the free, yeah, both relaxations are there here, they have 10. Look at here. Now, when does that relaxation part would come? From the moment you withdraw your B1 field, okay? How the magnitude of your vector capital M bar in the XY plane is changing, you refer to it as transverse relaxation or free induction decay, FID, and its projection on the Z axis, you refer to as T1 relaxation. Which relaxation happens first, T1 or T2? Which is faster?
T2.
T2 is faster. because there is again lattice spin interactions, and the dephasing is the reason why it happens faster, right? During the relaxation, which is the value that keeps increasing? Is it the projection of it on the z-axis or in the axis, xy plane? Which is the one which increases?
Z-axis.
Right. So that increases, no, its value increases along the z-axis, because it again, once it tipped off to the xy plane, you stopped it, so it is now coming back here. So the magnitude vector increases on the z-axis, and in the xy plane, its value comes down. And take a nice look at here. See again, here also there is indeed rotation, but now you are taking now rotating frame of reference. This is not on the lab frame of reference. This is more convenient. Okay, this is the magnitude you could see here, projection on the xy plane. This is its projection on the z-axis. This is keep on. So yeah, so that's what. And of course then there is a rotation also is on the xy plane. If you look at, right, you could see here on the first picture how mx and my are changing. There is a rotation here. But then if you are taking just the magnitude of it, okay, you could see here, this is FID, free induction decay. You could see here, this became 0, but still this is increasing here. MZ is increasing. This continues to be 0 here. So T2 relaxation is, again, for illustration, perhaps they even amplified the time it takes for decay here and the time it takes to regain its value on the z-axis. But still, that relatively, this you could notice here, mxy becomes 0 faster there. And in the mx-my plane, on the xy plane, if you look at it, this one keeps rotating, right, and then comes back here. So that's why you could see here there is a rotation going on at a constant speed, and that's the vector here. Is that clear? So these are the three nice illustrations. The first two for how it tips, okay, and that again tipping, first video is about the lab frame of reference where you keep your axis constant, and the second one you keep rotating it. The rotation you do it for axis, so only you would see there how it moves on there. Okay, that's the first two videos illustrations, and this is an illustration how T1 and T2 varies, right? Its magnitudes vary, and and on the other hand, how mx and my also keep changing. Okay, so with that, I would now come back to perhaps the final part of what we are going to discuss in MR imaging. That's about slice selection. Okay, so now you consider that when your B naught is same for the whole object, right? Your angular frequency is gamma times B naught. So if the magnetic field you are applying in the Z direction is uniform throughout, everything has the same resonant frequency. Now you want only portion of your object to resonate and respond. So what is that you need to do? You need to vary spatially the resonant frequency. Since you need it for a particular z direction, what you would do is you would vary the gradient. You, in addition to b naught, which is there in the z direction, you would spatially vary by adding a small gradient value zz. Okay, I'm calling it small because compared to B naught, this is relatively having a incremental change in that is good enough for us. So you are linearly changing it based on in which location of Z you are in. Okay, and that's ZZ into Z, and this is what you are going in the changing in the Z direction. Again, be very clear with this point that the applied magnetic field after you are done with B1 is just in the Z direction, but this Z direction value would vary with the values of X, Y, Z of the object. That point has to be pretty clear. Okay, now this is what you have. B is varying with respect to X, Y, and Z. Okay, the time variation is not there here, and xy is, we are bringing change now. If I have to strictly write it now, I could even write it as b of z comma t. So since we want to have slice selection, so slice, I would say it's a z value. So what we are doing it is b naught plus, this has nothing to do with xyz values, zz into z. This is something varying with respect to z, which is added to the constant uniform magnetic field you have everywhere, b naught, right? Once you know the magnetic field, you know how to compute the frequency at which it makes these spins resonate. Okay, that's gamma times b. So that's nothing but gamma times b naught in plus cz into z. This is the resonant frequency with which it rotates. And you could see now, for varying values of z, this resonant frequency is different. So that's what it is shown here. The first one, for example, I'm showing here, I could have shown a similar graph for omega naught also, just that because anyway, omega and b, there is just a constant multiplication factor. So you could, if you make b naught into gamma b naught, I could write here omega. Okay, that graph should be just a scaling, matter of scaling is there. Now, so for the simplicity, let me show you, observe here how b is the uniform magnetic field. Earlier there is an uniform magnetic field, now you have spatially varying. How does it going to vary? See, the component everywhere is b naught into z cap. That's, you could think of as this dotted line. In addition to that, you are adding zz times z. Okay, so if I just simply plot zz times z, I should have plotted it at the origin. Anyway, I'm adding it to b naught. So I'm just, if I just lift it by b naught, that would give me b naught plus zz times z. So that's, now it's no more uniform throughout spatially, but now depending on the z value, you have a variation in it. So everywhere the b naught now spatially, depending on the x, for a given x value, for each different x value, z values, this is going to be different. So each is resonating spatially for different values of z, the frequencies are different. Clear so far? Any questions so far? Devyan, is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. See now, next thing is now what you need to do now is with whatever frequency it is resonating, if you give now that frequency, okay, from which do you give this frequency? This comes from b1, correct? So now you are applying this uniform magnetic field, and if your RF pulse or b1 we are calling it, so that you should give now, that is what now you should make the resonance come from that particular, each frequency is different, that particular resonant frequency you have to give it through this field. So that is only when, if you look at the level of quantum level, that's when the energy transfers would happen. It would take that, because both of them are at the resonant frequency, and that's when it move from one state to the other state, causing all the effects that we have discussed earlier. So now another important thing is, um, look at it this way. It's not exactly omega naught, there will be a small increment of plus or minus delta omega, let's say, within which this energy would be good enough. So all those things, so there is always a tolerance within which it keeps responding to it, right? So that, how do you get that? So this is what then, I think is it earlier? I think it's fine. So what you would do is, it's more like a low pass filter. That's the kind of effect you want here. Let's say here in the frequency domain, you want, let's say this is your omega, okay? Omega minus delta omega, omega plus delta omega. These are the frequencies, okay? That's the kind of what you want here, is a kind of a low pass filter pulse that you would like to give, something like a rect function. So if you look at this, is again will become more and more clear as we move on further, you will get better clarity. So the transmitted RF pulse, to be more precise, the envelope of the transmitted RF pulse, which is also you could refer to, we were referring to it as B1 field, would look something like this. So because this is a rect, so if you look at it in the time domain, okay, you would get something like this. The sinc function is what you would be getting there. And now, depending on the ZZ value, okay, you would figure out from where you want the response, right? So on one side, on the grid, so B naught is constant. I'm just simply showing you here the pulses for different fields that are there. B naught is anyway constant field, nothing is changed over time. When it comes to the gradient coil, which is applied in the Z direction, okay, that would look like this one, right? So if you are looking at it ZZ, okay, so gradient field, so you could see here ZZ into Z, that's or spatially, so that would look, so if you look at that gradient field, you will be applying that gradient, you will be applying would be ZZ. Suppose assume that you fixed the ZZ value at which you want to apply. So now that gradient coil value is given here, and then depending on the ZZ value and depending on at which location you want, you would apply, now you will tip the magnetic field using an RF pulse, right? And you want it something like a low pass filter, because from omega in plus or minus delta omega, you want that. So the direct function, you could think of this again, we will come back to it very shortly. So this pulse you would be transmitting it, making it tip, and then take the measurements. Okay, so
So,
yes sir.
typically it should be an impulse, right? Because we just need a very little amount of energy to tip it off.
No. It's because see, what you need is, there is a whole object is there. Okay, you have the entire object is lying. Let's say this one is lying in your scanner. Okay, you are going to take the measurements at different slices. When you take a slice here, it could have a thickness here for all the values which are there within this thickness. Okay, you want the response from them. So what you do then is, you see each one is where is, so spatially every point is resonating with different frequencies. So what you would do now, would like to have is omega. So omega is essentially, you could see the same curve gives you the same shape you have for omega values. Now within a particular region, you want the response from all of them. Okay, because we are in the discrete domain, and then you cannot actually take it somewhere, you have to discretize. So that discretization you move in terms of steps here. For a given thickness, whichever are all the elements are there for that particular thickness, you want response from all of them. So that's why you have omega plus or minus delta omega, and that would be equivalent to something like a sinc function. So this is what in the frequency domain we want it. So if you look at the time domain response, for that you would require something like a sinc function.
So that I understood. But if you're applying a this rect function kind of thing, then we will be getting the resonant frequencies corresponding to a range of frequency values, right?
This rect function is not, we are not, are you talking about this one?
Yes, sir. B1 we are applying as
Yeah, so you won't apply
the
rect function there, you apply sinc function there, something similar to sinc function. See, this is yeah, one thing maybe I should have make it clear. See, first I am analyzing what is it in the frequency domain we want it, because now each is resonating at a different frequencies. So that's why I have drawn here first something related to omega, but you are applying over time. So that's why then equivalent one would be something like a sinc function. This is with respect to time, and this is with respect to frequency.
okay. So even in the frequency domain, yeah, I was talking the frequency domain itself.
Okay.
It's exciting a range of frequencies, right? Because there's an
Correct.
interval of frequencies.
Correct. Range of frequencies. You are right.
So what if there are multiple materials which are lying in that particular range?
No, see, we are considering hydrogens here. Okay, spin is hydrogen, hydrogen atoms only you are considering. Okay, within that, if the density of these hydrogen atoms is changing, that has nothing to do with frequency. If you look at the expression for frequency, right, it has something to do with the gyromagnetic ratio for a given atom, which is, for example, hydrogen. It is constant. That's value is fixed. Okay, gamma by 2 pi, we have seen something like 42 megahertz or 42.6 megahertz or something. Then this frequency is dependent on the spatial location only for a given uniform magnetic field of B naught. Spatial location plus, of course, the gradient, which is constant for the entire thing. So it is,
Yeah,
in other
okay, sir.
words, with the material, it is not going to change.
Okay, got it, sir.
Am I making sense?
Yes, sir.
Good. So again, there is a bit more complicated case which could fall into the regime you are talking about. For example, what would happen if there are different atoms other than hydrogen? We have talked about carbon, calcium, and other things for which gyromagnetic ratio is different. So even from a different spatial location, it could respond. Okay, then there is a complication. But the moment you are considering only the hydrogen spins, then there is no problem here, is it not?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That is fine.
Yeah, good. Any other question before we go further? Every bit should be, every module should be clear to you, so that the rest would depend on what we are discussing right now. I hope this is fine with everyone. Aravind, is that clear? I hope he's there. I could not see the list. I'm just saying some names. Fine. Okay. Yeah, please feel free to stop me, because it doesn't matter even if it extends a bit, but it is important you get clarifications here. Okay. Now, there is another very important aspect of slice selection we are now going to discuss. That's about what will be the effect of this gradient. If what would happen if I'm taking high gradient field versus what happens if I'm taking the ZZ to be smaller value. That's what we're going to discuss now. See, now another thing we are going to consider here is usually this you refer to as the bandwidth, okay, the frequency bandwidth. So that usually is fixed. Okay, within this bandwidth you would be considering the values. That's kind of fixed thing for a given MR scanner. So by the way, this would depend, you could see here that bandwidth would essentially depend on different things like omega naught particularly, or the magnetic B naught value you have, and there are different things. For the time being, you consider, okay, let's not go into that part right now. It's probably not required here. You consider for a given bandwidth, okay, what is going to happen if I am varying my gradient ZZ. So smaller gradients, is it like this, is the slice thickness or which I am going to acquire the images is going to vary or not? Okay, or is it going to, if I'm increasing ZZ, is the slice thickness or which I'm getting the response is increasing or decreasing? That's a very important aspect here. By the way, this just to give some pointer here, this would depend on the kind of pulses you are using here. Okay, because based on that, the shape of that would decide the bandwidth that you could or which you could acquire the signal. We will not go into those details, but assume that we fixed the kind of shapes of the RF pulses that we are going to transmit here. So now what we are going to discuss is for a given bandwidth, or in other words, you call it as delta W. Okay, assume that, if you want to call that, I should have written it as minus delta W by 2 to delta W by 2. Okay, so that this length is delta W, something like that you could consider. Okay, so now that is fixed. So this is something you could see here. Say for example, GZ. Okay, what is it that I'm plotting now? You consider this as Z axis. Okay, ZZ into Z added to omega naught. Okay, gamma times ZZ into Z. That's what you have to add it to gamma times zz into z should be added to gamma times b naught will be omega naught. Okay, that will be something like this. Suppose if you have a smaller gradient, this is how it is. If you are increasing the zz value, this is how, of course, this is very clear to you. Its equivalent is essentially the slope y equal to mx plus c. Okay, your c is omega naught here, and then you are, what would happen if you are increasing the m value? Now you take a suppose this is where I have a omega here at which I would like to compute that, and then there is a around that there is this delta of omega naught. You could see here for a small change here when your gradient is high, right? So what is going to happen there? Okay, what is the z values that I'm so that would essentially tell you within this range what all z values are there. Okay, this is not at all difficult. Maybe this is one way I have drawn it, where you could see that if I am increasing, so all I did is I just took omega here, okay, with minus plus or minus delta w by 2. You just draw lines here and see the corresponding values of z within which all of them have within this tolerance of plus or minus delta omega by 2 for this omega value. Okay, you could see here that as you are increasing the gradient field, the thickness would decrease. That means you would get it more precisely for that particular region, that volume. If you take xy constant volume, you will get it in a very with more resolution in the z. Okay, that's what would happen. Okay, similar thing is grand again, the zz directions now have come down, but that's okay. It's just pay attention more to here. So you have, for example, the zz1 is having, you could see the slope is more than zz2. Now you have taken omega plus or minus delta omega by 2. So this would correspond to, okay, now within this resonant frequencies, what all z values are there. If you look at it, for example, the moment you are increasing the gradient, okay, these are the values. This is the slice thickness you would get. Okay, versus you are reducing the gradient, slice thickness is going to increase. Is that clear? So the relationship between the slice thickness and your gradient is, for a given bandwidth, if you are increasing the gradient values, you get results, very finer results. If you are increasing, even a small change would bring a bigger change there in the resonant frequencies. That's the reason. Of course, this is pretty intuitive. Even without the graph also, you could make an intuition. Even from the graph also, you could right away do it and you would see this result. Is this conclusion clear, that for a given frequency bandwidth, if the gz value is high, okay, the slice thickness would be small, and vice versa. Is everybody with me? Is this clear? You would
Yes, sir.
exactly, yeah, good. Now so that's what you could see here. So what does it mean if I am plotting here the gradient, okay, or time, larger slice thickness if I want, the gradients that you would be applying would be small here relatively, if you see. So these are, I'm just plotting here. So you have inputs on one side to, anyway, b naught, nothing to do. Okay, this would always remain. Once you started your machine, there is nothing is going to change with respect to b naught. There is something to do with b1. B1 you want it for a particular bandwidth. So that bandwidth, depending on that, that's what would decide the shape of your B1 RF field that you are going to transmit. So that's, for example, we are drawing there a sink like function. Okay, now you know, now you want to make at the same time the different regions with respect to the z axis to resonate differently. So you are applying here a gradient field. This is a, there are three fields, right? B naught field is constant, B1 field is you are using it to tip. The other field that you are going to apply now is this gradient field, which you make it, for example, z, you want a small thickness, relatively high value of zz. You want a larger slice thickness, you make this zz to be gradient value to be small. Is it clear? Are they, hope these graphs are clear? And then,
Sir,
yes, sir.
so what is the visual difference between thin slice and a
Okay.
larger slice.
So here GZ is larger here. If you want a thin slice, GZ1 is greater than ZZ2.
So, but how do they, like, what's the difference between thin slice and
Okay.
a
See, if you
large?
are taking a thin slice, see, for example, let me take a extreme case. In the extreme case, if I make this ZZ to be extremely small, okay, then what would happen? Everything resonates at the same value, is it not? So what the response you could record is, could be, for example, you treat everything as if it is a single voxel and you get it there. You get higher resolution, and if you want to get high resolutions, you have to slice it very finely. That means you need to apply here large gradient fields along the z-axis. It will take more time for your acquisition, because you would be doing, once you get it here, you should go to the next place and do again acquisition, and you move on, and you move in baby steps here. Once you are doing small slice thickness, but you are getting a high resolution there.
Okay, sir.
Is that yeah, this is a very important question that what you ask. This has to be very clear. Okay, any
So,
other?
anyways,
Hmm.
if we take a like thicker slice, so everything would resonate at the similar frequency. So, what is the recording that we will get? It would be for the complete skull, right? It would be a three-dimensional recording.
In the extreme case you are talking, right?
Yes, sir.
In the extreme case, then you treat it's averaged, everything got averaged over a very large region. That's what you are getting there. Your Z resolution is very small. So number of slices
Yes.
you would be getting in the Z direction would be very small. You could even, in the extreme case, you end up with, for example, XY gradients I have not talked about, which would give you the resolution in the XY plane basically. Okay, that we have not
Okay.
talked about, but you would get almost like in the extreme case a 2D image.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyone else have any questions here? Okay, good. If that is not there, this is the very more rigorous way of looking at the relation between the slice thickness and the frequency bandwidth. So how I could look at that? For example, we already know this relation, right? We have already done it. Omega is equal to omega naught times gamma times zz times z. Correct? That's where I'm starting from that relation. Now for omega, delta omega, let's say assume that I could do it from omega 1 to omega 2. My delta omega will be absolute difference of omega 1 and omega 2. So assume that at Z1 location, it is resonating with a frequency of omega 1. At Z2 location in the Z axis, it is resonating with the frequency of omega 2. This relation is linear. Now for a given bandwidth, that means delta, so all I'm doing is omega 1 equal to omega naught plus gamma times zz is fixed now, so it's Z1 location, so I have Z1. Z2 location omega 2. Now I want the bandwidth for a given band. I could do analyze these relationships in multiple ways, but what I'm looking at it is more practical, how people would be doing in a real MR scanner. So we are looking at delta omega, right, which is omega 1 minus omega 2, would be equivalent to, you just take difference of them, and there also you take the absolute value. So that would essentially give you gamma times zz into absolute value of z1 minus z2, which is equal to delta z. So in other words, your delta z equal to delta omega over gamma times zz, which is telling you, now you could interpret it in different ways. One most practical interpretation is, for a given bandwidth, if you are increasing the zz value, the slice thickness would decrease, and the other way around. Okay, this is the relation. So now if I tell you what is the bandwidth of your acquisition or your scanner, you could then tell me without any problem what would be the gradient that you need to apply, what is the strength of the gradient in the z direction that you need to apply for obtaining your images at a specific thickness values. This is the relation that tells you how to do that. Clear so far? Any questions so far? Okay, so now two important additional clarifications or insights into this B1. The frequency of the transmitted RF pulse determines the value of omega 1. Okay, see, we want what we have seen here is spatially different locations are resonating with different frequencies. I want at a particular location the response from a particular location. So for that, what I should do now, at the frequency of that particular location, I should give this RF pulse. So the point here is the frequency of this RF pulse, which is B1, determines the value of omega 1, or around which you are getting the frequencies. And then the shape, not the frequency, and the duration of the transmitted pulse determines the value of delta omega. This I skipped earlier. Suppose now the frequency. So actually, that's why I was telling earlier. It was the envelope of what sync. The shape is kind of an envelope that tells you how your delta omega is there. For example, here I wanted something like a low pass filter, right? That's why I took a sync. If I want something else, accordingly, the shape of this, or to be more precise, the envelope would change. But where from this frequency is coming, I want at a particular Z location, it is resonating with a particular frequency. And how do you do that? Again, I did not explicitly want to go into any math of it. I would rather stop here with a good intuition. If you are getting a good intuition, anytime you could go back and work it if you need to do more. So I'm just giving you, I'm not going into the mathematical expressions for it, but this is something like this. Oh, if you look at this image, okay, here, this would be only the envelope, okay, and the frequency in the time domain, in fact, B1 waveform would be something like this. So the way it is oscillating over time will tell you at what frequency it is oscillating. Okay, that's what would dictate from which location you should get it, and the shape or envelope within which it is oscillating with a given frequency would tell you the nature of your bandwidth you would be getting, or yeah, that's what would decide the nature of this. And of course here, if you want something like yeah, this is again an approximation. You should stop at some point of time. You cannot give it to infinite, and of course then you would get some spikes here. And then this is the bandwidth you could be getting if you are using an envelope, something like this. So this is a very subtle thing. I hope still you could get a feel for it. Is that clear? Any questions here? Okay, then I assume things are clear here. I'll move forward. Okay, so this again, I'm saying it using an illustration that I grabbed from the net, so from some other source. Okay, so what is happening here? Depending on your RF pulse, you know at which frequency you would be getting a response. Depending on the frequency of the RF pulse, you will know omega value, and depending on the shape of your RF pulse, you will know the bandwidth of it. So assume then this is the location, and depending on the bandwidth and see, this is the line which tells you the ZZ. So then, and this width here, hope my cursor is visible there along the y-axis. Okay, whatever you are looking, the horizontal strip there, that's based on the shape. The location is the central location of it is based on the frequency. So frequency and shape of RF pulse would give you this strip along the vertical axis. Now you could vary this ZZ value gradient, and that tells you where you get the slice from. Okay, I hope this picture you are getting it. So this is the magnetic field gradient. Okay, this you could think the B naught value here. This is on top of it. Whatever you are applying is coming here. This is your B1. Okay, this is your gradient field. This is your B0 field. This is your B1 field. And that's telling you where you are getting the slice and the width of that slice as well. How thick is that slice as well? You are getting it. Is everybody with me? I can afford to pause here. If you have some questions, there is absolutely no problem.
Sir, there are two factors that you want to fix, that is Z and omega, to image a particular region, right?
Right.
So Z parameter is controlled by the gradient magnetic field, like where the delta Z, and omega is controlled by the frequency of the RF pulse.
Right. Maybe I will just come back here. See, this is the relation we have. See, there are two things here. In practice, if you look at it, usually the bandwidth is fixed. You won't normally change it from scan to scan. Rather, you would just like to change the thickness. Sometimes, depending on the structures you are going to take a look at, you might want a very high resolution one, or you are fine with taking it at a low resolution. Depending on if the structure is too big or big enough, you might would like to increase the slice thickness. Okay, so for the time being, if you assume that, but still what I'm before also telling here is how would you manipulate this delta omega. Okay, and after that is done, what we are discussing is for a given delta omega or for a given bandwidth, how would the thickness, slice thickness would vary by varying the gradient in the applied in the Z direction. These are the two things that we are discussing here. So when it is coming to the bandwidth here, we are saying that there are two aspects here. Bandwidth, one is omega at which you want the response. The second one is along within that, in which level it is, what is the tolerance level within which you could get a response there. These are the two aspects. Now, for figuring out the omega value, that's what would depend on the B1 frequency of your signal would is something that dictates from which value there of Z you would get the response from. And another thing is the width of that. That width is defined by the shape or envelope of this waveform. Is that clear so far for bandwidth?
Okay, so the envelope of the RF pulse determines the delta omega.
That's right. That's right.
Okay.
Delta omega
Okay.
is determined by the envelope. Omega value is determined by the frequency. Given these two, delta Z is determined by gradient in the Z direction. These are the 3 points. Sumant, is that clear?
Yeah, yes, sir.
Good. Okay. So with that, we are in principle, we are done with the selection. But again, there are some other phenomena that's going to happen. Again, we are not going in depth into them, but still I would like you to make aware of what happens in practice. Okay. See here. When you are applying a magnetic field, and then your frequencies are different. Okay, when you are applying this gradient magnetic field here, the frequencies at which each one is rotating is different. Now from that you could figure out that you are, on the other hand, the response you are getting is over a particular region you are getting the response, but within this thickness, okay, with the finer variations within this, each one is rotating at different frequencies. In other words, they are rotating at their own speeds. Now, what you are measuring, the signal that you are measuring is on the XY plane. And since each of them within this thickness are rotating at different values, once you are taking, had it been just a single line, okay, ideally, then there is no problem with that. But now, given that it's not in fact just one line, there are multiple lines. Line is kind of a zero thickness if you are considering it hypothetically. Then since each of them are rotating at different speeds, and the result you are looking at is the projection of all of them on the XY plane, magnetizations of all of those tiny magnets on the XY plane. Within that single line, all would be in coherence, but you take multiple lines, then since they are rotating at different speeds, your magnetic field on the XY plane would become zero. So that's another problem. And to deal with it, there is something called as refocusing gradient. Again, I don't want to go in detail into it, because to further explain this, again, we need to go back to the block equation. And from there, you would understand these constants that I am going to talk about. But we will just will have an intuitive idea about it and leave it for the time being. Later, you could anyway come back and study it in detail if you happen to work on it, and if you would like to know more about it. Okay, so hope it is clear, at least this point is clear, that the moment the thickness is high, you are having in each, with the varying z value within that, you are getting response from throughout this, all the spins that are there within this thickness in the z direction, and then each one is rotating at its own speed. So the projections of it, so each one is at a different phase now, because each one is rotating at a slightly different speed. The XY direction, you would get a zero signal. Is that clear? Can you visualize that part? Or you could see here, for example, at the time of rotation, for example, you think that in the z, if you look at it in this plane, okay, or what plane you call it, okay, so the projections of it, when the moment you are taking it, all the sum could become zero. So there is something called as a refocusing gradient, this gradient, okay, this is called as slice dephasing. Okay, this term, within the slice, dephasing is happening, giving you no signal in the XY plane, and hence this is called as slice dephasing. To deal with this, what they would do is, if your gradient magnetic field is in this direction, okay, minus of that slope, okay, exactly in the opposite one, they would apply additional magnetic field here, and that would address this dephasing. Okay, again, I don't want to go in detail into it, because that itself would perhaps require a complete class, but I think this should intuitively at least make sense to you now. Wherever earlier the B naught field is more as you are moving, let's say in this towards your right, from the origin, if you are moving it, earlier the values are more and now the values are less here. So that should in a way compensate. If you apply for sufficiently enough time there, that should compensate, that would eventually would be compensating for this dephasing. Okay, and this gradient that they would further apply, okay, is referred to as refocusing gradient. This again you would apply in the z direction only. This is referred to as refocusing. There is a slice dephasing is happening, because of that you are getting zero signal. Now to address that, you are applying a refocusing gradient, which for instance, if the earlier zz is like this, okay, you are taking negative slope of it. So this is how it would look. There is again one more detail here to understand this. When this dephasing would happen and all these things, we need to go to the block equation, but it is sufficient to figure make an understanding here that your RF signal is picking the maximum value here when it reaches to the half of its value, and that is the point at which dephasing would happen. And from there, to address and bring them into all phase, see, if you keep on applying it again forever, okay, this would again cause dephasing, because now it's equivalent to applying zz in this direction, and the similar effect would come if the earlier one which is there on the right hand side is moving faster. Now left hand side would be moving faster, but you would end up again with dephasing. So there is a time period up to which you need to apply. Okay, and that constant, to derive that, you should start again from block equation and do that, which I don't want to do, perhaps not required for most of us. So enough to know here that this will be half of from the length at which the RF pulse has reached the peak on its envelope. From there till the end, you need to that magnitude equivalent one you need to apply. Okay, that time period. Say for example, this whole thing, the width of your signal is pulse, RF pulse you are applying is tau p. You will, after tau p by 2, you would start it. Okay, this area, whatever is there, exactly the reversal of that ZZ you need to apply for this time duration. So tau p by 2, if it is ZZ here, you will apply minus ZZ here. That would now bring everything within that slice into in phase, and that is then, see here, this is the received signal here. This is what you are transmitting. The received signal, you notice here, would be 0, and once you reach tau p by 2 somewhere around half, that's when it would start increasing, and everything would come in phase and into the xy plane by the end of this. Okay, and then you are stopping the signal. Okay, and that is when you would again get, then there is only force in the z direction, so that's when it starts coming sorry, into the z-axis again, this field keeping rotating and coming into it. Free induction decay or T2 relaxation is what we are showing there, and during this free induction decay you would be capturing your signal. So this is analog to digital conversion. So at regular intervals of time here, you could take measurements of this free induction decay for that particular slice. This is called as, so in addition, this is the gradient you would apply in the z direction to select a slice. Okay, and of course for a given RF pulse, right? And then you, before you take any measurements of it, okay, that's when, see, the maximum would be there the moment it tips. Okay, and then you withdraw the your RF pulse, and then it again keeps on building that. So that point would come after your refocusing gradient is there. That's all as far as the slice selection is concerned. Okay, I hope this is clear to you. Again, what I have not discussed in this course so far in detail is about, we are now earlier classes, for example, in the last class we discussed about, we assumed that a slice has been given. Okay, within that slice we derived the equation, signal equation there for that particular slice, which turned out to be this SR of t equation, right? This is the equation, and with that equation we assume we could get rid of this. We did some demodulation as well, and this is what you got there. And then you have figured out you could vary kx and ky by varying gradients in the x and y directions, and thereby you could, for example, if you want, you could take the samples in the frequency domain on a uniform grid in the kx ky space, and then you apply Fourier slice theorem, you get the image. Okay, that's this image of that 2D slice. Okay, but the selection of 2D slice I have not described there. That's what we discussed in this class. And what I have not yet discussed anything about is, how do you vary, and in order to take samples, what are the different strategies that you could use? So this is all pulse sequences generation, in what way would you do, and how you take the samples of it. This part I have not discussed, but I'm sure you could figure out from here, and then you could, that is pretty straightforward. Okay, how is that straightforward? You could see the relations here. Kx ky is nothing but gamma by 2 pi into integral over g to t. This is what you have control here. By varying the gradients in the x direction, you have a control over kx. By varying gradients in the y direction, you have control over ky space. By varying gradients in the z direction, you have control over the slice over which you are going to get these kx and ky spaces. That's how you acquire the entire image. So with this, I would wrap up MR imaging. I hope you got some reasonably good intuition about how MR imaging works, how's, and even more importantly, I hope you got a good appreciation for all the signal processing aspects. See, without signal processing background, it's almost impossible to understand how MR imaging even works, acquisition works. It's almost impossible, right? These are all the concepts, and yeah, that's this is a wonderful application of particularly the frequency domain analysis that we see in the signal processing. Okay, any questions so far?
So the refocusing gradient part is still not very clear.
Yeah. Is it clear that are you clear with slice dephasing, why it is happening? Is that part clear?
No, so even I did not understand why is it dephasing. Once it's already in the x-axis, what's the problem?
See,
Like it's in the
now
xy plane,
look
right?
at it this way. See, you have a thick, you have a slab here in the z plane. When you are getting it, it's not at one point. See, this is like a slab you have in the image, right?
Yes, yes.
And then but here if you look at it, the gradient is different here every point within this slab, correct?
Yes.
So because of that, the resonant frequency is different for all these points as you move in the z direction, correct?
Yes, sir.
Because gamma times this magnetic field would give you the resonant frequency. So each, as you move to your right here, the speed is increasing. Okay, is it done?
Yes,
So
sir.
each is
Yes, yes.
rotating at a different speed here, and then you are taking how do you get the signal transfer FID signal or T2 relaxation signal? You take the X-ray projections on the XY plane, correct?
Yes, sir.
So when you are taking it, since each of them is rotating at a different speed, the moment you are projecting it, each would be at a different XY locations when you take the projections.
So all of them cancel each other out.
That's right. That's right.
Hmm. So what if we go with a smaller slice, like a thinner slice? It would be lesser than.
Yeah, thinner slice, this effect would be smaller perhaps.
Okay.
But yeah, that's possible. That's again a quick comment I made. I need to make a bit more analysis of it, but it appears it would be relatively impact would be less.
Okay, so this refocusing gradient, it actually makes them all align in the x direction,
uh, no, not all aligning
xy
in
plane.
x direction, all rotating at the same. See what you are doing now.
Okay.
See, actually, as you are moving towards your z axis, earlier the magnetic field is increasing, in fact. So the resonant frequency is increasing. Now, if you look at the refocusing gradient, exactly the opposite is happening here.
So
Isn't it?
each of them now have the same magnetic field after applying the refocusing gradient.
I would say it compensates for whatever differences were there earlier by applying exactly the opposite one.
Okay.
So that's why earlier ZZC, as you move towards your right, earlier the frequencies are increasing. Now you are compensating it by applying frequencies in the opposite direction to make it reduce and make it nullify overall.
Okay.
Again, from the equation point of view, we need to again start from block equation and look at that. But I think hopefully that compensation part makes sense even from this without any equations from this explanation. Right. Any other questions? So I'll just maybe pause the recording. And okay. So in that case, we'll stop our analysis of MR imaging, the discussion about MR imaging with this video lecture.
Regarding the